tonight we are talking about the best vlogging lenses for Sony at the beginning of 2018. It's currently January 21st, 2018, and as of today, these are my top picks for vlogging on Sony cameras. So let's roll that intro.
We may be on my way out wild and free, making memories.
All right, so for tonight's discussion, though, we are going to be talking about crop sensor Sony cameras. If you happen to own a Sony full-frame camera that you're going to be vlogging with, just buy the 16 to 35 millimeter f4. It's image stabilized. It's not too big and too heavy like the 2.8 version, and it's not an unreasonable price, and that's just such a great range. So please just go buy that lens and vlog with that lens. But we're going to be talking about the more congested area, and for a lot of people that are, kind of getting into vlogging and figuring this out, you're probably vlogging on a A5100, an A6000, maybe an A6300, an A6500, something in that range of them, the more entry-level Sonys that can still be expensive, but, you're going, I want to get into vlogging. What kind of lens should I get? Well, we're going to break it down into, 5 key things that we need to look at for vlogging. 1, width. Like how wide does that lens go? That's important for vlogging. We're going to talk a bit about cinematography and low light. So that is, how well does it do when it's dark, and how much can it blur that background? Those two are ultimately tied together into something. We're going to talk about the focusing ability of the lens. How quickly can it capture focus so your face is in focus, or whatever you're trying to show can be in focus. We're going to talk about stability, like how shaky is it? How good is it going to be for kind of handheld vlogging? And the last thing, obviously, is price, because you can have a perfect lens, but if it's $18 million, well, it just might be out of the range of all of us. Okay, so those are going to be kind of the 5 criteria that we talk about for more, the crop sensor style Sony cameras. So let's get into it and talk about some lenses. First up, the kit lens, the one that comes with most all of these cameras, the 16 to 50 millimeter power zoom OSS kit lens. It's usually like $100 extra if you're, instead of just buying the body, or on the cheap ones, it's just what comes with it. And honestly, this isn't a bad lens for starting out with. I'm going to have links to a number of these vlogs, and so if you look in the description below, you can see a vlog I did recently, shot in 4K on my A6500 with this lens, and it actually got me thinking, it's really not that bad. So, there's a few things. I mean, price obviously is good. Width-wise, 16 millimeter on a crop sensor Sony is actually pretty wide. Canons usually start at 18 millimeters for their standard kit lenses, and they've got a bigger crop factor, which means it's not as wide. So 16 millimeter, a reasonable amount of width. It's f3.5 on that really wide angle spectrum, and so that's actually not bad for low light or for trying to blur the background. It's not going to be as good as something as the Sigma 16 millimeter f1.4, but it's fine. And then you also, you get the flexibility of being able to zoom in. Now, you start losing a lot of light when you start zooming with this lens, but you know what? Really, really not too bad. Focusing-wise, it does a good job. It's a good focuser. You don't really have to worry about anything with that. And then it is image stabilized inside of this lens. So stability-wise, it's fine. And so in many ways, we're going to talk about some other lenses, but if you can't make a good vlog with this lens, it's actually not really the lens. There may be some other things where if you're wanting to go, hey, I want to shoot super cinematic slow motion sequences, yeah, you're going to need something else, I would say, because this just can't blur the background in the same kind of way. Or if you're in dark situations, it doesn't let in a lot of light. But if you're starting out, this plus something like a 50 millimeter 1.8, which can do those really blurry things, maybe not super wide, but good combo right here, okay? Good combo, so not bad for starting out for vlogging. But if you're wanting to go for that ultra wide angle look that, has become very popular in vlogging, like a Casey Neistat style vlog, and I'm sure lots of other people have done it too, is you're gonna wanna look at this. This is a Sony 10 to 18 millimeter f4. So when we're talking about width, this is a lot wider than the other lenses you're going to get into. You might think, well, it's 10 to 16. How big of a jump is that in the wide end? Well, it's a lot. Going to 10 millimeter, again, there's going to be links below where you can see the difference. If you want to compare two vlogs, you can just see how intensely wide that gets on this. And so that's really nice. The other nice thing about this particular lens is it's f4 the whole range. So in some ways, it actually lets in a little bit less light than the kit lens does at the widest angle. But this one, when you start zooming, you start losing a lot of light. This one stays exactly the same no matter how you're zooming it, which can be nice if you're set to any kind of manual focusing or something, or manual settings. So as you're zooming in, it's not getting darker and darker. So that part is nice. F4 is reasonable. It's not like a ton of light, but it's fine. It's also image stabilized, which is nice because the wider your lens is, the more stable your vlog is. Whereas when you zoom in, you notice shakes a lot more. So it's really wide, plus it's image stabilized. So if you're shooting on something like a A6300, A6000, A5100, that doesn't have any sort of image stabilization, this helps smooth that out. So it's a very, very smooth lens. So that part of it is nice. Cinematics, I mean, f4 at that wide, it's not really going to blur the background a ton. It can do it a little bit. The big thing with this lens, though, is, anyway, here in Canada, I think it's $1,000. In the States, it's like $800. So it is not a cheap lens. So for that reason, I think there's people who may be struggling to get into it. But if you want that ultra wide angle look, there's really not any other good options right now. I imagine later on this year, Sigma is going to begin to start to release more of their lenses that are, native E-mount for Sony. And they'll have some lenses that'll end up doing that, but that's probably not going to be till, I would say, summer or fall, if we even get there. You can get adapters, you can do other things, but this one just works really well. It focuses super well. It just works. And so you got to pay for that on Sony if you want that ultra wide angle look. That's what you need to do. There are things like the Rokinon / Samyang 12mm f2, which sounds like a wonderful option, but there's no autofocus. And if you're on Sony vlogging, it's probably you're here because you want Sony's really, really good autofocusing. And so to actually shoot manual focus would be tough. One, only the A5100 or A5000 is going to give you a screen to see if you're even in focus. If you're vlogging with a 6300, 6000, 6500, something like that, you're not even going to know that you're in focus. And so it'd be really hard to dial that in. So, as far as ultra wide angle options, this is really the lens to go to. Now, if you're looking at something to be more of a super cinematic option, I've done a full review on this, is the Sigma 16mm f1.4. This is new, just came out in the last couple of months. I got to try it out for a week. Wow, wow, wow. What a fantastic lens. Let's talk about, 16 millimeters again. It's the same width as this guy is, but where this is f3.5, that lens is f1.4, which is like 8 times as much light that it's letting in, and it's blurring the background so hard. You'll see in that vlog, again, links below, where eyes are in focus, ears are going out of focus. Just gives a wild, wild look to it. And it's nice because you can shoot these little cinematic sequences in a car or, I don't know, anywhere that you want to be able to shoot something that just has that cinematic, wonderful look. You can shoot with one lens. Now, it doesn't zoom, so you can't zoom in, you can't zoom out. It's just a prime lens. It's not too big or too heavy. It's a little bit obviously heftier than this, closer in size to this, but it ends up being a really, really interesting option if you're going for the best visual effects, or if you're regularly vlogging when it's dark out. It is awesome. Price-wise is about, $500, I think just under $500 US, so not unreasonable, certainly a good chunk cheaper than the 10 to 18 millimeter. So not bad there. Focusing-wise, it does pretty good. Anytime you're trying to get a camera to focus when you have that background so blurry from shooting at f1.4, it can be tricky. I found in not the greatest lighting conditions, it could hunt a little bit, but it still moved very quickly. And Sony's autofocusing is so good that it's nice. One thing to note with the 16mm f1.4 is make sure you just test it out first when you're using a camera that has built-in microphones. I've heard, although I didn't personally experience, but I've heard, because I was using an external microphone, that the internal ones can pick up a little bit of that focusing noise. So just watch for that, is something to maybe consider. But as far as, the best looking lens, that for sure is. Now, you need to note that 16mm does not have any image stabilization in it. So for me, shooting with the A6500, which has the in-body image stabilization, it helps offset that. But if you're shooting with an A5100, an A6000, A6300, you need to be smooth. So make sure you've got a GorillaPod or something else to help you smooth that out. You don't maybe have to. Again, I've vlogged for a long time on a Panasonic with no in-body image stabilization and none in the lenses, and you can make it work. You just have to practice being smooth or else it's gonna be a good chunk jittery. Those are really my 3 favorite vlogging lens options. Again, we mentioned the 12mm Samyang / Rokinon, interesting option. Sony's 16mm f2.8 is kind of, I got that actually early on when I switched over to Sony, and I thought, I'm gonna try this out. I think it's gonna be an awesome little like walkabout lens. One, because it's like similar in size to like the kit lens, which is tiny, and 16mm is nice and wide, and f2.8 I thought, could be nice. The problem is that lens doesn't work with the good focusing system in Sony. They use contrast autofocus and phase detection autofocus together to get like the really nice autofocus that is why you're on Sony. Only half of that works with the 16mm, so it doesn't focus as well as it should. The 20mm little pancakey lens does work with both of those, but 20mm, you're starting to get in the land of like, that's not that wide, and people are just gonna be zoomed into your face like really, really tightly. And, other than that, I haven't seen anything else that's too compelling. There are some new lenses coming out from, the various Chinese manufacturers. I think there's a new like 14mm f2.8 autofocusing from, is that Yongnuo, or maybe it's Samyang or something like that, but their focus motors are really, really noisy. And from what I've been seeing, they've been getting picked up in the microphones and kind of make the footage a bit unusable. So, native Sony lenses are very, very, very quiet. Sigmas have been noisy to this point. I've got the 18 to 35 there, very, very noisy, but the 16mm was good. Sigma also makes a 19mm f2.8, which is, it's not a bad option, but again, it's just getting in really tight to your face. And I feel like once you're in too tight to your face, people don't get to experience what's going on around you. That's maybe another decent budget lens, but that's 19mm f2.8. This is 16mm f3.5, and there's not a massive difference there in low light and cinematics. So if you're at that point, that lens will probably be a little bit sharper than this lens is, but in the middle where typically people are looking, this is reasonably sharp. So I don't know where we're sitting at today. Those are my recommendations for lenses to look at. If you're kind of wanting to step up your vlogging game a little bit, 16mm f1.4 or the 10 to 18mm, f4. But other than that, I would say stick with the kit lens. Get used to vlogging with the kit lens. Make it happen. You may be better off adding a different lens that you kind of swap on to shoot like cinematic shots, maybe the 35mm, 50mm, something like that to just kind of, mix it up a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts? Drop it in the comment below. If, this is helpful, you should come hang out on the channel, subscribe to it, like the video, whatever. But the conversations below are what are really important. Again, there's gonna be lots of links to, different resources where you can check out a few of these different lenses and different videos. But I'm Justin. Thanks for watching on a fine Sunday evening. Peace.